Hi there. My name's Larissa. And this was supposed to be just a will reading. But instead, my own family laughed when they announced I was left with nothing, not a cent, not even my name in the will. They called me unfit, said I abandoned them. But the worst part? They planned it, together, long before I walked into that room. And just when I thought I had no voice left, my daughter stood up and said 7 words that made the whole room fall silent. The air inside my mother's parlor room felt like the kind of silence that precedes a tornado. Skylar squeezed my hand as we stepped inside, her fingers smaller than I remembered. Darlene was already seated at the center of the long oak table like a judge waiting to pass sentence. Her smile wasn't warm, it was practiced, like she'd been rehearsing it in the mirror all morning. The smell of lemon polish mixed with tension. My Aunt Irene gave me a once-over and didn't bother hiding her disapproval. Some cousins nodded, but it wasn't kindness, it was protocol. This wasn't a family reunion. This was a verdict. Holcomb, the family lawyer, shuffled papers as though he hadn't already made up his mind about me years ago. I caught his eyes, neutral but not kind, and took a deep breath before finding a seat at the end of the table, far from Darlene's perfectly manicured hands and laser-focused stare. He cleared his throat. "To Darlene Doyle," he began, "goes the primary residence and all its assets." Darlene didn't even blink. Of course she knew. She always knew. To Irene Doyle, a monthly stipend and antique heirlooms of Ramona's choosing. I didn't flinch. Not yet. I had braced myself. Then Holcomb flipped a page and paused, only for half a second. "And to Larissa Doyle, nothing." The sound of my name followed by silence hit harder than any slap. The room stirred with whispers. Someone laughed quietly, probably one of the cousins who hadn't spoken to me in a decade. Darlene leaned in just enough for only me to hear her. "Guess Mom finally cut her losses." Skylar's hand clenched mine tighter. I gave her a soft smile to shield her from the humiliation bleeding out of me like an open wound. My jaw tightened. I didn't look at Darlene. I couldn't. If I did, I might lose the control I'd worked so hard to keep. Then came Irene. I mean, really? What kind of mother walks out and thinks she can just walk back in? That's not how family works. I didn't answer. I stayed still, let her words hover like flies. Darlene smirked and turned her gaze toward Skylar. "Poor girl. You deserve better than this woman. We all tried, but she chose to run." I snapped my head toward her, but stopped short of speaking. "Not here. Not yet. You came for the truth," I reminded myself. Not for their approval. Not for scraps. I kept my voice inside, swallowed the anger, and placed my free hand on Skylar's back, grounding myself in her warmth. Holcomb flipped the next page of the will. The sound echoed too loud in the still room. Darlene leaned toward me again and whispered, sharp as broken glass, "Mom made sure people like you disappear, and she did a damn good job." I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. But my mind wasn't still, not after hearing her say it like that, with such satisfaction. I could feel Skylar shifting beside me, sensing the shift in me, sensing the heat crawling under my skin. Holcomb cleared his throat again, louder this time, but I noticed the slight hesitation in his fingers as he turned to the next page. A flicker of doubt? Or just nerves? I couldn't tell. But in that second, something clicked. He used to golf with my ex-husband, every other Sunday. They shared drinks, cheap advice, and complaints about their wives. I had forgotten that, buried it under years of survival. Now here he was, holding my name in one hand and my erasure in the other. Darlene leaned back in her chair like she owned the building. Her voice was syrupy and smug. "Since Larissa clearly wants to be part of the family again," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "we might as well address the elephant in the room." She turned toward the door and nodded once. It opened, and in walked Miss Kellis, Skylar's old kindergarten teacher. I hadn't seen her in years. "This is a bit unconventional," Darlene added with a laugh, "but it's important to understand patterns of behavior." I sat straighter but said nothing. Miss Kellis gave me a polite nod, then looked around the room. Yes, I was Skylar Doyle's teacher. I remember her well. Sweet girl. But her mother was difficult to reach. She missed multiple meetings, left Skylar with neighbors often. At times, it felt like Skylar raised herself. The air thickened. Irene nodded like a church deacon backing a sermon. A few cousins leaned in, hungry for more. Holcomb stayed quiet, eyes on the carpet. Skylar looked at me, confused. I didn't look away. I couldn't. They were using my past as a weapon, but they didn't know the full story. She remembers one version, I thought. I lived the other. Back then, Skylar had asthma attacks weekly. I worked night shifts to pay rent on a one-bedroom apartment with a heater that barely worked. I made peanut butter sandwiches stretch 2 days. I kept her breathing, clothed, loved, even when my own mother shut the door in my face. I didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, I stood, walked over to the pitcher, poured Skylar a glass of water, and returned. My face was unreadable. My silence wasn't shame. It was strategy. The noise in the room dulled. They were expecting tears, a tantrum, a crack in the armor. But I gave them nothing. That, more than any outburst, made them uncomfortable. The room stayed still, but I could sense something shifting, like when you're standing on a dock and feel the tide pull beneath the planks. Holcomb tried to move on, but Darlene wasn't finished. She stood slowly, folding her arms, her voice loud enough to hush the whispers. "We're not just talking about morals anymore," she said. "We're talking theft." My chest tightened. She took money from Mom, asked the bank. Gasps, one soft curse from the back, and then silence. Irene didn't hesitate to pile on. There was an account that went negative out of nowhere. Thousands gone. We stayed quiet, for Mom's sake. She didn't want it public. My throat dried, but I didn't speak. Not yet. Holcomb glanced at me, then back down. That silence said enough. Darlene handed him a bank printout like it was a bomb wrapped in fax. "Here, 2016. Withdrawal. $4,000. Labeled household expenses." I didn't need to look. I remembered the day. The line at the pharmacy, the motel parking lot, Skylar's fever, the inhaler I couldn't afford. But they'd stripped all that away. Context erased. "She drained the account, then ran off," Darlene continued. "Let's stop pretending this is about grief." One of the cousins murmured, "Guess she cashed out before the will was even cold." No one laughed this time. They were watching me too closely, waiting to see if I'd break. I blinked, and I was back there again. It was raining hard. My ex slammed the front door after screaming so loud Skylar woke up gasping. She was 2. I wrapped her in my coat and drove, shaking the entire way. I pulled into Mom's driveway, knocked. She opened the door, looked at me, and then passed me like I wasn't there. "You left your vows," she said flatly. "You don't belong here." Then she closed the door. That night, I kept Skylar warm in the car, parked behind a Waffle House. I used the last of my tips to buy gas, baby formula, and cough syrup. 3 weeks later, I got my first paycheck from the nursing home. That money? It bought us time to survive. It didn't come from greed. It came from desperation. Back in the room, I met Darlene's eyes and smiled, not kindly. "Tell them what you spent Mom's inheritance on in 2018, I said, voice steady. "Or should I?" Darlene didn't even blink. She let out a short theatrical laugh that bounced off the crown molding. "Oh, please. We all know you love throwing mud when you're cornered." She turned to Holcomb and raised her voice for effect. "And I'll have my attorney file an injunction first thing Monday if this little circus keeps going." It was classic Darlene. When truth got too close, she threw legal smoke. Irene stood, not missing a beat. "This isn't about legacy anymore. This is about protecting the family from slander and shame." She looked around the room like she expected applause. All she got was more silence and a few eyes darting away. I stood slowly. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "If I wanted to sling mud, Darlene," I said, "I'd start with your second mortgage. Or maybe the wellness retreat in Arizona you wrote off as elder care while Mom was in the hospital." A sharp inhale rippled through the room. Even Holcomb froze for a beat. Darlene's expression cracked for just a second, then snapped back into place. "You're bluffing." I stepped toward the table. "Try me." Skylar shifted closer to me. Her fingers brushed against my arm, but her eyes didn't leave Darlene. I didn't let up. "You want to drag this into court? Fine, let's take it there. Just don't pretend you control the story anymore." Holcomb cleared his throat, loud this time. "Let's all stay civil. The estate proceedings don't need to become litigious. Darlene leaned toward Irene and whispered, "She thinks this is over. She has no idea what's coming." I heard it. Without turning, I said calmly, "Keep pushing, Darlene. You won't like what happens when I push back." That got her attention. She stood, slow and deliberate, and met my eyes with something that almost looked like respect, but not quite. Her voice dropped to a simmer. "Then push, sis." For a second, we just stared at each other, two sisters locked in a decades-long war, now face to face at its ugliest hour. The room had gone so quiet, even the ticking of the antique wall clock sounded like a drumbeat. Then came a voice I didn't expect. "Grandma said this would happen. Watch this." I turned just in time to see Skylar rise from her chair. She stood tall, her chin slightly trembling but her voice clear. She walked calmly toward her backpack, unzipped it, and pulled out a small envelope. The silence cracked. Skylar stepped toward Holcomb and handed it to him with both hands. He looked at it like it might explode. The name across the front was written in my mother's handwriting, sharp, precise. Underneath, "Play only if things turn ugly. If Larissa is hurt, this means it did." Darlene shifted in her chair. Irene's jaw tensed. "Where did you get this?" Holcomb asked gently. Skylar looked at me first, then answered. "She gave it to me after our last walk. She said I'd know when it was time." Holcomb peeled the flap open, revealing a USB drive and a folded note. He read the message again, slower this time. A hush fell across the room like fog. Darlene let out a forced laugh. "That could be fake." Holcomb raised one brow. "It's real. I recognize her handwriting, and per her instructions, I'm legally obligated to play it if this exact circumstance occurs." I couldn't breathe for a second. My hand instinctively reached for Skylar's. She squeezed it, steady, unshaken. "I trusted her," Skylar whispered to me. "She said the truth would outlive everything else." I nodded, barely able to speak. Darlene opened her mouth like she had something ready to strike, but for once nothing came out. Holcomb moved to the TV stand, pulled the small laptop from his bag, and inserted the USB. He adjusted his glasses and clicked the file. The screen blinked to life, blue light flickering across the faces of every person in the room. And then there she was. My mother, older, frailer, dressed in the sky blue cardigan I'd given her 2 birthdays ago. Her eyes looked straight into the camera, tired but certain. "Hi, Larissa." Her voice filled the room like thunder before the rain. "If you're watching this," my mother began, "then I'm gone. And if Larissa's in the room, I know exactly what's happening." No one moved, not even Darlene. On screen, Mom sat straighter, her frail shoulders wrapped in the navy sweater I gave her before her last hospital stay. Her hands were folded in front of her, a tissue clenched tight between them. "I believed the wrong people," she said plainly. "I didn't listen to the right one. I let pride become parenting. I let other voices drown out my own daughters." The only sound in the room was the soft hum of the laptop. The storm outside had crept closer. Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the window. "Larissa," she continued, "I know I hurt you. I know you tried. And I know I made it harder than it had to be. But I saw what you did for Skylar. I saw how you kept going, even when no one believed you should." I blinked away the sting in my eyes. "I changed the will." The air snapped like a rubber band. "I left the house to you and Skylar, the savings, and I started a college fund in her name." There was an audible inhale from the couch. Darlene looked like someone had slapped her. Irene leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Holcomb, calm as ever, reached into his briefcase and placed a new folder on the table. "This was signed and notarized 2 weeks before Ramona's passing. I witnessed it myself." Darlene shot up from her chair. "She wasn't of sound mind." "She was lucid," Holcomb replied firmly. "Her physician confirmed her capacity in writing. Would you like to see the document?" I didn't speak. I turned instead to Skylar, brushing a curl behind her ear. "She saw us," I whispered. "Finally." Skylar smiled, and for the first time in hours, I let my shoulders relax. Darlene didn't sit. She leaned toward Irene and hissed low enough that only I could hear. "Then we destroy whatever she thinks she just won." The moment the screen went dark, Irene stood and walked briskly to the hallway. I could hear her heels click against the hardwood floor, sharp, urgent, like she was calling in backup. Minutes later, she returned with her phone held out like a weapon. "Dr. Myers on the line," she said, loud enough for all to hear. "Ramona's physician." Holcomb looked up, eyebrows pinched. "On speaker, please." The voice crackled through the speaker. "Yes, this is Dr. Meyer. I was Ramona Doyle's primary physician during her final year. In that period, she occasionally demonstrated confusion and mild short-term memory issues, common in late-stage patients." Darlene pounced. "So, just to clarify, doctor, you're saying she wasn't fully capable of making legal decisions?" A beat. "It's not that simple. She had moments of full lucidity, but that nuance didn't matter." "There it is," Darlene declared, like she'd won the lottery. "That second will is trash. It's invalid. She didn't even know what she was doing." Holcomb didn't move, didn't speak, but I saw it, the quiet clench of his jaw, the tightening of his shoulders. He was calculating. Then Darlene took it one step further. "And while we're here," she tossed a manila folder onto the table. "Let's talk about Larissa's past, since we're pretending she's some model of integrity." Inside, credit reports, missed payments, student loan defaults, a 2017 eviction. "She wants a house?" Darlene sneered. "She couldn't manage a studio apartment." For a moment I couldn't breathe. Skylar stared at the table, her small fingers gripping her dress. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I didn't lash out. "That was survival," I said quietly. "You don't know what it means to start over with a toddler, no help, and $26 in your account." Irene rolled her eyes. "Excuses." Holcomb cleared his throat. "Credit history is not a measure of moral character, Miss Doyle, and this isn't a financial tribunal." But I wasn't done. I turned to the room. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I've never stolen, never lied to this family, never begged for more than a sliver of decency. But I see now, you only ever respected silence or submission. I did neither." That struck. For the first time, the cousins shifted uncomfortably on Darlene's side. A few avoided eye contact. Then Skylar stood. She looked at me first, then at the room. "You forgot what she's survived," she said, steady and sure. But I didn't. The room didn't move. Not a breath shifted. Rain had begun ticking lightly against the windows, as if the house itself held its breath with us. Skylar took a quiet step forward. She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn children's book. Corduroy. It had been her favorite when she was little. Now it was something more. She handed it to Holcomb. "There's something inside," she said softly. Holcomb opened the cover and found a folded piece of pale yellow stationery tucked in the middle. His brow furrowed as he unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakable. "Dated 4 weeks after the video," he announced. "To Skylar." He began to read. "If they hurt your mother, show this. She is the strongest woman I know. She did what I couldn't. She left when I was too afraid. I regret not standing by her sooner." Holcomb's voice caught. He looked up. No one spoke. "This isn't just about inheritance, it's about justice." The weight of those words flattened the room. Some cousins shifted away from Darlene. A few looked down at their laps. Irene sat stiff, her jaw clenched, though her hand trembled in her lap. Darlene snapped, "Anyone can write a note and date it. It doesn't prove anything." Holcomb folded the letter with care. "The ink matches Ramona's pen. The signature is hers. It's authentic." Irene tried to rise, but her knees buckled. A cousin helped steady her. No one else moved. I stood and looked at Darlene. Not with fire, not with gloating, just finality. "You weren't trying to protect Mom's memory," I said. "You were trying to protect your version of her, the one who never changed. But she did." Darlene didn't answer. Her hand twitched like she wanted to speak, wanted to fight, but there was nothing left to say. Holcomb cleared his throat. "Per Ramona Doyle's revised will and supplemental evidence, all assets transition to Larissa Doyle." No gasps, no applause, just the rustle of paper and the sound of Darlene's heels crossing the hardwood as she picked up her folder, turned toward the door, and walked out. Irene followed. Slower, heavier. Skylar settled back beside me. Her hand found mine again. "You did more for me than anyone ever has," I whispered. She looked up and smiled. She trusted me. Holcomb adjusted his glasses and glanced in my direction. There's just one more thing to sign, if you're ready. The morning air inside the house felt too still, like the walls had exhaled after holding their breath all night. Light filtered through the curtains, dull and quiet. It wasn't the kind of silence I remembered growing up here. This one didn't come with judgment. It came with peace. I moved slowly through the rooms. My hand grazed the old hall table, where a dusty crystal bowl still held faded peppermints. The hallway smelled faintly of Ramona's favorite lavender spray. I stepped into the living room. No voices, no glares, no watchful silence. Just space. I lowered myself into her chair, the one she never let anyone else use. For the first time, I didn't feel like an intruder. I sat back, let my fingers run along the soft armrest, and let the grief come. Not loud, not angry. Just there. Real, whole. Later, Holcomb knocked gently before entering. He held a manila folder in one hand, coffee in the other. "It's all official," he said. "Just needs your signature." I took the pen and paused. Did she know what this would cause? He looked down, nodding once. She didn't care. She said it was time something was finally right. After he left, Skylar came in with 2 mugs of tea. She set one beside me and curled up on the couch, legs tucked under. "You okay?" she asked. I looked at her. This child, this small, strong soul who held the line when no one else would. "You weren't just brave," I said. "You're the reason I kept standing." She shrugged gently. "I just said what needed saying." "Exactly," I whispered. "That's more than most grown-ups ever do." Outside, rain had stopped. The trees stood wet and quiet against the window panes. No more storms, just aftermath. We spent the rest of the day packing, not to erase the house, but to gather what mattered and leave what didn't. I didn't think of Darlene or Irene, not with anger, just nothing. I knew they'd never say sorry, but I also knew their silence didn't get to define me anymore. Skylar handed me a box marked photos. Inside, I found a picture of my mother, young, smiling, holding baby me. I didn't cry. I smiled back. She hadn't left me the house. She gave me my voice back. Before we close this chapter for good, there's something I want to leave with you, not just as the woman in this story, but as someone who walked through the fire and made it out standing. Sometimes, the justice we wait for doesn't come from courtrooms or signatures. It comes when we're finally seen, fully, without apology. For years, I thought silence made me strong. But strength, real strength, is choosing to speak when your voice shakes. It's standing tall, even when everyone's waiting for you to fall. If you've ever felt erased, overlooked, or told your story didn't matter, let this be your reminder. It does. You matter. You don't have to win the whole world over. Sometimes, you just need to hold your ground long enough for the truth to echo back. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been made to feel like your voice didn't belong in the room? What did you do? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story touched something in you. Or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know. And hey, if this story didn't sit right with you, I welcome that too. Let me know why. Let's keep this real. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories that speak to the cracks and courage in all of us, go ahead and subscribe. Hit that button so you don't miss what's next.
My name is Julie, and this is my story. It had been dark for hours, but I was still focused on my work at the office. I was so caught up in sketching, making changes, and working on the project that I didn't notice when my boss, Jack, walked in. He stood at the door with a concerned look and reminded me to take care of myself. Jack pointed out how late it was and asked if I was going to pick up my son from boxing class. He appreciated how hard I was working, but warned me not to overdo it. I was shocked to realize it was almost 6 p.m. and I needed to hurry to get Jerry. Quickly gathering my things, I explained to Jack that I wanted to talk to him about the new design for a children's book cover, which mixed traditional styles with modern trends. I rushed out, leaving Jack behind as he looked over my sketches. As I made my way to the boxing academy, my mind was racing, thinking about how I managed so many things: a sick husband, a child, housework, and a demanding job. When I arrived, I found Jerry waiting in the locker room, anxious but relieved to see me. He had been alone for an hour, thinking I had forgotten him. I hugged him, apologized, and asked him about his day and homework. Jerry had calmed down and proudly told me he finished his homework while waiting. I praised him, feeling lucky to have such a responsible son. I knew he missed his father, my first husband, who had passed away, leaving a big hole in our lives. When we got home, we found Adam, my current husband, lying on the couch, grumpily flipping through TV channels. He complained about being hungry since lunch and feeling ignored, calling himself an unhappy, handicapped man. Asked him if his leg was hurting and promised to make dinner quickly and prepare a compress for him. Adam settled down, waiting for the food, while Jerry, irritated by the situation, went into the kitchen to help me peel potatoes and chop tomatoes. I praised my son, feeling thankful to have him by my side. Since Adam got sick, my life had become really hard. I had to split my time between taking care of Jerry, handling my demanding job, and looking after my sick husband. There was no time left for myself or to rest. I was always tired. At work, my coworkers respected me because I worked hard and put my heart into everything I did. But my story started long before that. I was the youngest in my family. My parents passed away when they were quite old, first my mom and then my dad. After that, I felt very alone in my big 4-bedroom apartment in Wilmington. I missed my mom's comforting words, her advice, and my dad's kind looks. Sadly, they weren't there during one of the hardest times of my life. That's when I met Kyle, my first husband. He was in the military, often away in combat zones, coming home only for short breaks. We fell in love quickly, got married, and I waited for him during his long missions. When Jerry was born, Kyle promised to leave his dangerous job after our son's christening, but that promise was never kept. He didn't come home again, and I became a widow at 27. It was a long and painful time of mourning, but I found strength in my son and my work. Years later, my life changed when I met Adam. He was very different from Kyle, confident, charming, and romantic, always bringing me flowers and poetry. Without realizing it, I fell in love again. Adam was good to Jerry, and we decided to get married, partly because Adam pushed for it. He worked in construction, traveling often, and brought financial stability to our home. But some of my coworkers didn't trust him. My close friend Joyce even warned me that Adam's frequent travels and big paychecks seemed suspicious. She hinted he might have a secret life, possibly even another family. I always felt uncomfortable when people talked about Adam like that. I defended him, saying he worked hard and brought home money, which was what mattered. I also shared the happy news that we were expecting a baby, and Jerry was excited about having a sibling. But then, tragedy struck. While working at a construction site, Adam fell from the 3rd floor and badly injured his leg and ankle. He came home with a splint, but even after a long time, he still couldn't walk properly. For a man who was always active, this accident was devastating. He felt useless and distant from everyone around him. I did my best to support Adam, taking on all the responsibilities of the house, caring for Jerry, and being the family's only source of income. With Adam just lying around and not working, I felt especially overwhelmed, especially with a new baby on the way. But I was determined to stay strong for my children. What worried me most was Adam's behavior. He didn't seem to care about anything, not even Jerry's progress at school. I thought he could at least help Jerry with homework or read to him, since his leg didn't stop him from doing that. But instead, Adam acted like a child, always wanting attention and affection, rarely getting off the couch. I felt torn between my love for Adam and my growing frustration with how he was acting. I tried to lift his spirits, asking why he was so down and suggesting he get some fresh air on the balcony. I even offered to help him walk, thinking it might help him recover faster. I asked him if he was interested in how my day went, how Jerry was doing, or how I was feeling, but Adam just said I didn't understand his pain. He complained about constant pain in his leg, saying the painkillers didn't work, and called himself a useless invalid. He accused me of being selfish, thinking only of myself, and said that pregnancy wasn't an illness, questioning why I was making such a big deal out of it. A few days later, Adam found a woman online named Lauren who claimed to be a healer. She promised to cure his muscle and bone problems quickly. I tried to explain to Adam that it was probably a scam, but he was convinced it would work. Lauren started visiting our home regularly, and Adam said his pain was getting better. One day, I came home earlier than usual because Jerry was sick and had stayed home from school. When I arrived, I noticed a pair of unfamiliar women's shoes in the hallway and realized Lauren was there. The kitchen door was closed. I wanted to greet both Lauren and Adam, but something made me stop. I quietly approached and listened to their conversation. I was curious about how the treatment was going, but also wondered why the door was closed. I overheard Adam talking to Lauren, calling her his love and complaining about pretending to be weak. He talked about how they would soon have the house to themselves, freeing them from me. Lauren seemed worried, telling Adam to be patient and not rush things. She mentioned that they had to be careful, especially since I was pregnant, to avoid suspicion. Then, Lauren revealed a chilling plan involving poison in tea. As I listened, a chill ran through me. My coworkers had been right. Who had I trusted? The conversation I overheard was terrifying and hard to believe. My first instinct was to burst in, confront them, and kick Adam and his lover out. But I quickly stopped myself, realizing I needed proof of their plans. My mind raced with thoughts about Adam's true intentions. After thinking frantically, I quietly walked back down the hall, loudly closed the door, and called out to announce I was home. Lauren came out of the kitchen, acting normal, saying she had just finished a session and praising how much better Adam was doing. I kept calm, thanked her, and promised to pay for her sessions. After she left, I had a brief conversation with Adam, took care of him, and checked on Jerry. I made excuses about being tired and having a headache, though inside, I was still in shock from Adam's lies and betrayal. The next day at work, I was distracted, crying in the bathroom and unable to focus. I didn't know how to escape this situation or expose them. My distress caught the attention of Jack, my boss, who had been watching me with concern. During a quiet moment, he gently asked what was going on, saying he could tell I had been crying and that it hurt him to see me like this. Surprised by his concern, I ended up telling him everything. Jack and I had a long-standing trust, and after sharing my story, I felt a little lighter. I confided in him about my fears, saying I felt like I was living with a traitor and a murderer. I asked for his advice on how to protect Jerry and myself. Jack took my concerns seriously and suggested we go to the police. He offered to call a detective he knew and encouraged me to tell them everything. He assured me the detective was trustworthy and would help. Then, Jack came up with an idea: to secretly loosen the screws on Adam's wheelchair and record him with a hidden phone. If Adam stood up when the wheelchair broke, we'd have proof. Jack reassured me that the police were ready to help and that I wasn't alone in this. I felt a huge sense of relief, gaining strength from his support. After speaking with the detective, my fear lessened a bit. The detective promised to investigate Adam and Lauren, warning me to be careful, avoid danger, and only eat and drink things I had prepared myself. But even with these plans in place, I still felt angry every time I saw Adam. My frustration and resentment grew stronger as the night went on. I carefully loosened the screws on Adam's wheelchair, set up the phone to record, and waited. When Adam leaned on the chair, the wheels came off, and he fell to the floor, but he quickly stood up. Jerry heard the noise and ran into the room, surprised to see Adam standing. I started clapping sarcastically, pointing out how well those healer sessions must have worked. I confronted Adam about his lies and pretending to be sick. Realizing he'd been caught, Adam tried to fake pain and limp, but I angrily told him to stop the act because the truth was clear now. As Adam struggled to come up with an excuse, the doorbell rang. Jerry opened the door, and Jack walked in with a police officer. I had told Jack about the plan, and he had been waiting for the right moment. The officer quickly restrained Adam and announced his arrest for attempted murder. Adam desperately protested, saying he was innocent and that he loved me, but the detective told him to be quiet. The detective revealed that I had sent a video of Adam's sudden recovery and that Lauren, his accomplice, had already confessed. Still in shock, I watched as Adam was taken away, unable to say goodbye or fully process what had just happened. Jerry went up to Jack and thanked him for helping me, saying he never liked Adam. Jack assured Jerry that Adam wouldn't come back and offered to stay around and help if Jerry was okay with it. Jerry happily agreed, even comparing Jack to a movie hero for exposing Adam's lies. That day changed my life. Jack suggested Jerry watch some cartoons while he and I talked about grown-up things. Jerry understood and went to his room, leaving us alone. Jack hugged me, trying to calm my nerves, and reassured me that it was all over. Adam and Lauren would be in prison for a long time. In a daze, I muttered about my bad luck with men, my first husband dying, my second turning out to be a criminal, and now being pregnant with his child. I questioned if something was wrong with me, feeling completely lost. Jack gently told me that I had missed noticing someone who had been by my side all these years. He confessed that he had always loved me and would never betray me. Jack encouraged me to see what I already had, but he made it clear he wasn't pressuring me. Finally, allowing myself to trust again, I hugged Jack and thanked him for always being there. I admitted that I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a while, I felt a little bit of hope. I could have returned Jack's feelings, but I wanted to take my time to get to know him better. Jack reassured me, saying he deeply respected me and wanted to be my friend first. He promised to stay by my side, if that's what I needed. I told him I didn't want him to leave, but I needed time to process everything. From that moment, my life slowly started to get better. Even though my pregnancy was difficult and I had dark thoughts, Jack was always there for me. Our relationship grew stronger, and eventually, I fell in love with him. I divorced Adam and married Jack, realizing he was the loving and trustworthy man I had always dreamed of. As time passed, Jack proved to be reliable and caring toward both Jerry and me. Our boutique thrived, and Jack often had to travel for business. One night, about a month before my due date, my water broke unexpectedly. Panicking, I called an ambulance and barely managed to ask a neighbor to watch Jerry before I passed out. The birth was extremely hard, and I drifted in and out of consciousness. Among the medical staff, I didn't recognize one of the nurses. It was Hannah, Adam's accomplice, seeking revenge. When I woke up, I immediately felt something was wrong. The doctor approached me with a sad expression and told me the heartbreaking news that my baby hadn't survived. I covered my face and cried, feeling my world fall apart. Jack tried to comfort me, reminding me that Jerry still needed me and promising to stay by my side. We buried the baby, and I cried many tears over the tiny grave, struggling to accept the loss. If it hadn't been for Jerry's strength and maturity, I don't know how I would have made it through the pain. 6 years after losing my baby, the memory still weighed heavily on my heart, but life had moved forward. Our boutique, called Canada, had become one of the most famous shops in Florida City, drawing customers from all over the country. Jack and I worked in perfect harmony, often understanding each other with just a few words. Jack and Jerry, now 15, had developed a strong father-son bond. Jerry was passionate about soccer and an excellent student. One day, I had to take the subway for an important business meeting because our car was in the shop. On the way, I saw a boy about 6 years old, using crutches. He looked abandoned and dirty, and my heart ached for him. I bought some pastries and a warm drink, then approached him to offer the food. He was so hungry that he almost choked while eating, so I watched him carefully, feeling a deep sense of concern for this child. I asked the boy his name and why he was begging. After finishing his food, he shyly but with some trust told me his name was Stephen and explained how he had hurt his leg. Worried, I asked why his parents hadn't taken him to a doctor, thinking there might be a way to help since he was still so young. Stephen sighed and shared his heartbreaking story. His mother was an alcoholic, and his father was never around. A wave of sadness and compassion swept over me. I hugged him, trying to comfort him, and promised to help. Stephen looked at me with a mix of hope and disbelief, unsure if anything could really change. I felt a strong need to help this child, and told him I would do everything I could to make things better. Wanting to reassure him, I told Stephen not to lose hope. I quickly called Jack, my voice shaky with emotion as I explained what was happening. Jack arrived soon after, listened to Stephen's story, and agreed we should help. We decided to go to Stephen's home to talk to his mother and better understand the situation. Stephen led us to his apartment, looking nervous. As we prepared to leave, I noticed his worn, dirty clothes and told him we would buy new ones on the way. When we arrived at the apartment, a strong smell of alcohol and cigarettes greeted us. The place was in terrible shape, and Stephen's mother was snoring loudly in a chair. I'll never forget the sadness in Stephen's eyes as he explained his mother's situation. He told us she hadn't woken up since the night before, after drinking with some men in the kitchen. My heart ached as Stephen described how his mother would yell at him when she woke up, demanding money for more alcohol and cigarettes. The pain in his voice was clear when he asked why his mother couldn't love him like other mothers do. Jack and I exchanged troubled looks and made a decision. We told Stephen we would take him home with us and see a doctor about his leg the next day. We left a note for his mother, explaining what we were doing. Stephen's gratitude was overwhelming. He hugged me tightly, calling me a fairy godmother, and said that maybe magic was real after all. His words brought a sad smile to my face as I gently stroked his curly hair. On our way home, we bought Stephen new clothes and a backpack with essentials. Despite everything, his excitement about starting a new life with us was contagious, lifting the heaviness of the situation, if only for a moment. All I could think about was taking care of Stephen. After giving him a bath and looking at his leg, we realized how bad his condition was. His leg was clearly deformed, and it broke my heart all over again. After a healthy meal and putting on clean clothes, Stephen fell asleep with a peaceful smile on his face. In the kitchen, Jack, Jerry, and I gathered to talk about what to do next. I was determined to care for Stephen, but Jack had concerns about the legal side of adoption, warning me that the process could be complicated. Jerry, excited about having Stephen join our family, promised to be a great big brother. Jack asked if I was ready for the long, difficult road of adopting Stephen. I told him with certainty that seeing Stephen in the subway had changed me, and I was committed to giving him the happy, normal childhood he deserved. The next day, I took Stephen to a pediatric orthopedist. After an exam, x-rays, and a CT scan, the doctor explained that Stephen's leg condition was serious and would need complicated surgery and long-term rehabilitation. When asked if he was okay with going through all that, Stephen excitedly said yes, knowing it would help him walk, run, and ride a bike again. His determination brought tears to my eyes as I hugged him, promising we'd handle everything. Talking to Stephen's mother, Sophia, was tough. We found her drunk and had to wake her up with cold water. Sophia angrily protested, saying we had no right to make decisions about her son. I tried to gently explain how serious Stephen's condition was and offered to pay for everything. But Sophia, irritated, threatened to call the police if we didn't return Stephen. Jack, reaching his limit, slammed his hand on the table and told her to go ahead and call the police, warning that she'd lose custody if they saw how Stephen was living. The tension in the room was high, and I held my breath, hoping for a solution that would give Stephen the chance he deserved. Jack placed some alcohol bottles and food on the table, watching Sophia's reaction. My heart raced as she quickly understood the situation and signed the papers without hesitation. She then began to cry, saying she loved her son but was just going through a hard time. I felt a mix of pity and frustration as she explained that she drank to forget her problems because she couldn't find work. Jack and I shared the same thought: people struggling with addiction shouldn't be raising children. It was unfair to Stephen to make him live like that. Once we were back outside, Jack and I sighed with relief, both agreeing that we could never send Stephen back to that environment. It wasn't a place for a child, and we were amazed at how he had survived there for so long. I quickly began preparing for Stephen's surgery, making sure all the necessary tests were done. When the doctor asked for blood donations from the family, I was shocked to find out that Stephen and I had the same rare blood type. The doctor's question about whether we could be related took me by surprise. I explained that we had found Stephen and were just trying to help him. We didn't think we were related. The doctor suggested a DNA test to check, which left me feeling both curious and nervous. When I told Jack, he pointed out how much Stephen and I looked alike. I felt confused and amazed, but agreed to the DNA test, trying to make sense of everything. During Stephen's surgery, I was incredibly nervous, praying that everything would go well. When the doctor finally came out with good news, I was overwhelmed with relief. In the weeks that followed, I was amazed at how close Stephen and I had become in such a short time. His strength during his recovery touched my heart, and I found myself constantly cheering him on, feeling so proud of his progress. At night, I would lie in bed thinking about the possibility that Stephen and I might be related. It felt like I was trying to solve a family mystery I hadn't even known existed. When Jack asked what I was thinking, I told him how incredible it was to imagine that Stephen might be a distant relative. As the day for the DNA test results got closer, my anxiety grew. I knew that, no matter what the test said, Stephen was already part of our family. I told Jack and Jerry, and they both nodded in agreement, ready to accept Stephen no matter what. One day, Jack came running into the room, holding some papers, looking excited. He told me to sit down and explained that the DNA test results had arrived. The test confirmed what the doctor had suspected Stephen was my biological son with a 95% probability. I was stunned, unable to process what I was hearing. I started wondering aloud about the baby I was told had died at the hospital, realizing that my son had been alive all this time. Stephen, who had overheard everything, asked if I was really his mother and if Sophia wasn't his real mom. With tears in my eyes, I hugged Stephen tightly and told him that, yes, I was his mother. I apologized for not knowing sooner and promised him that I would find out what had happened and that I would never leave him again. I was officially recognized as Stephen's biological mother, and Sophia lost her parental rights due to neglect. When Sophia realized she would lose the benefits that came with being his guardian, she suddenly acted like she cared, begging for Stephen's return and claiming she loved him. But Stephen remembered all the abuse and neglect too well. He was grateful for his new parents, Jack and me, and wanted to bring happiness to our family. After a full investigation, detectives finally solved the mystery of my son's disappearance. It turned out that Hannah, in an act of cruelty and desperation, had switched my newborn baby with Sophia's deceased child at the hospital. Learning this, I was shocked and furious, wondering how something like this could have happened and why Hannah wasn't in prison. The detective explained that life had its own way of delivering justice. Hannah was now suffering from a terminal illness and was alone in a mental hospital. When I got home, the house was filled with warmth and love. Jerry and Stephen were playing together, and Jack was cooking. Everyone rushed to greet me. Sitting with my family, I felt deep gratitude for our 3 wonderful sons, my supportive husband, and the fulfilling life we had built. During dinner, the conversation was full of laughter and plans for the future. Stephen, now feeling completely at home with us, shared in the joy. In this house, filled with love, everything seemed to be in harmony. Together, we had overcome so many hardships, and now, leaving the painful past behind, we looked forward to a future full of happiness and unity.
Hello, my name is Michelle, and I'm a 63-year-old woman. My husband passed away about 6 years ago, but I am still working. I have 2 kids, and 5 of them live in different states across the country. They each have their own families, and I'm very blessed to have such a big family. One of my kids, Kyle, still lives in our hometown. He went to the community college here, where he met his wife, Julie. I like Julie, but I didn't think my opinion mattered as long as Kyle was happy. They got married soon after and continued their education in their fields. Once they got good jobs and earned enough, they decided to have a child. I was excited to have another grandchild to spoil, but Julie was very strict about when I could visit and how long I could stay. This was understandable when Daniel, their child, was a baby, but it was still the same even when he was 5. I let it go because every family is different. Before I knew it, 15 years had passed. Because of the limited time I had with Daniel, we didn't get very close. However, we both loved books, so I always bought him books when I visited. One day at work, I got a call from Daniel. This was unusual because we rarely talked outside of family gatherings. I tried my best to connect with him like I did with my other grandchildren, but he seemed distant. Grandma, are you free to talk? Yes, honey, any time for you. Is everything okay? No, no. Why are you crying? Did you get hurt? Is there anybody at home who can help you? Mom and Dad are here, but do you need me to call them for you? No, I called you because I needed your help. My help? What can I help you with, darling? I need you to save me. Daniel, what are you talking about? Don't laugh, Grandma. I'm sorry, honey. That was just surprising. I'm not laughing at you. What's going on? I need you to save me from my mom. Save you from your mom? What do you mean? She's not as sweet and nice as she acts. She's really mean to me when no one else is around. I hear someone coming up the stairs. I have to go. Please don't tell them I called. Bye. I was confused and concerned. As far as I knew, Julie was one of the sweetest people. How could Daniel call her mean? I didn't believe him at first. I thought maybe he was just mad at her for something, like getting grounded. Daniel had always been a mischievous child, according to both Julie and Kyle. But something in my gut told me Daniel wasn't joking. I couldn't stop thinking about the call. It was so unlike Daniel. After a few days, I decided to buy a hidden camera. I felt wrong about spying, but I convinced myself I needed to do it because Daniel asked for my help. If I found nothing, I could just remove the camera. But if there was something wrong, I'd have to figure out what to do next. I hoped a long talk would solve any issues. The camera arrived a few days later. I set it up and was glad it had live and recorded footage I could access through an app on my phone. Once I had set up the camera and figured out how it worked, I decided to call my son and ask if I could come over. Hello, sweetie. How's everything? Everything's great, Mom. What about you? Same old, same old. I was wondering if I could come by your place one day. We haven't met in a long time. Yes, of course, Mom. How about this Sunday? That works, but shouldn't you check with Julie if it's okay? I used to hate it when your dad made plans without asking me. Julie would be happy to have you over. Don't worry, Mom. All right then, I'll be there around 6 o'clock. That works. See you soon. Take care. Even though I was going to Kyle's place with other motives, I was still excited to spend time with my son. I didn't get to see the rest of my family often, so it was nice having one of my children in the same town. The weekend came quickly. I got ready early and decided to bring something over. I went to the grocery store, picked up a nice bottle of wine, and bought a couple of books for Daniel because I knew he loved to read. When I got to my son's house, I was greeted warmly by all three of them. Daniel looked at me with so much relief that I got concerned again. He hadn't contacted me since that first phone call, so I had no idea what was going on. I spent the next couple of hours just talking to Kyle and Julie. We had dinner and drank wine. At some point, Daniel went to his room because we were talking about adult things that probably didn't interest him. I excused myself to go talk to Daniel. Julie tried to subtly stop me, but I insisted because I hadn't visited them in a long time, and I wanted to spend time with my grandson. Kyle told Julie to let me go. Once I got to Daniel's room, I shut the door behind me. I walked over to him and handed him the books I got him. We talked for a while about the books since he seemed really excited. I let him ramble on about them and didn't bring up what he had mentioned earlier. I wanted him to talk about it first. We then talked about other things, like what was going on in our lives. While he was telling me about his school and other stuff, he grabbed one of his notebooks and wrote something in it. He showed it to me, and it said, "Mom's listening. Can't talk about anything?" I couldn't tell if he was serious or just paranoid, but I went along with it. We continued our conversation while I wrote my plan in the notebook. I told him I had brought a hidden camera and asked if I could put it in his room. He quickly agreed. I found a good spot to place the camera, giving me a good view of the room. I started the recording and checked my phone to make sure the camera worked. I sat with Daniel a little longer until I told him it was getting late and I should go. I left my scarf behind on purpose so I'd have an excuse to come back if needed. I heard footsteps quickly moving away from the door, which made me wonder if Daniel was right. I hugged Daniel goodbye, went downstairs, said goodbye to Kyle and Julie, and went home. I was tired but checked the camera when I got back. I stayed up for an hour, watching the footage just in case. All that happened was Kyle walked into Daniel's room and asked what we had talked about. Daniel told him, and that was it. I fell asleep eventually and rushed to work the next morning. I only checked the camera when I knew Daniel would be back from school. Again, nothing much happened, and I started to think Daniel might be lying. I decided to give it one more day. If I didn't find anything, I'd go over when neither Kyle nor Julie was home and ask Daniel to give me the camera back. That night, as I watched the footage while reading, I finally found out what Daniel was trying to tell me. I watched Julie enter the room with a stick in her hand, with Kyle following behind her. I quickly unmuted the video. Julie asked Daniel what he did all day and made him describe everything in extreme detail. Whenever he stuttered, she would sharply ask if he was lying. If she thought he was, she made him hold out his palms and hit his knuckles 3 or 5 times with the stick. I watched in growing horror as she hit him more and more often. Daniel was sobbing, and Kyle just stood there watching. I was disappointed and disgusted. I had raised my kids gently and believed that kids are smarter than we think. They can understand when things are explained to them. I didn't understand why Kyle just stood there letting his son get hit for no reason. I wanted to rush over and stop them, but what would I say? It would be odd for me to show up just a day after my last visit. I remembered I had left my scarf there, which could be an excuse to go back, but I needed it for another day to see Daniel again. I picked up my phone and called Kyle. "Hey, Mom, is everything okay?" "Yes, no worries. I hope I'm not disturbing you." No, Julie and I were just saying goodnight to Daniel." "Ah, all right then. I just wanted to tell you that I think I left my scarf in Daniel's room last night. I remember setting it down and forgot it there. Do you think I could swing by tomorrow and pick it up? Why don't I just bring it over to you now?" "No, I'm too tired and will fall asleep before you get here. I had a long day at work and can barely hold up the phone right now." "All right then, why don't you come by in the evening?" "I can't. I have a game night with friends tomorrow." "Well, Julie and I won't be back until the evening. Why don't you come by the day after?" "I need that scarf for tomorrow. We're having a gathering." "Well, you could come by in the afternoon. Daniel will be home." "Lovely. I'll be there around 3. Good night, Mom." My heart raced as I ended the call. I came up with a lie on the spot. At least my call distracted Kyle and Julie enough for them to talk about what I said instead of focusing on hitting Daniel. Before they left Daniel's room, Julie said Daniel wouldn't get any food until dinner the next day. I was appalled. I wished I didn't believe they would follow through, but I knew they would. The next day, I took off from work and prepared myself for the conversation with Daniel. I was sure he wouldn't want to stay there, but I needed to hear him say it. Before going to Kyle's place, I picked up some food for us. When I got there, Daniel looked like he might faint. He was weak and tired. Julie really had made him go without food. I quickly gave him the food, and he devoured it. I felt so sorry for him and knew I had to make things better. When he finished eating, I spoke to him. "I'm so sorry," I said. "Did you see everything that happened?" "Yes, darling. I'm so sorry for laughing at you earlier. I had no idea." "It's okay. I know Mom seems like the nicest person, but has she always been this way? The beating only started recently, but the starving has been going on for a while. I need to understand why Kyle isn't doing anything. He's too scared of Mom. He just follows her and does everything she says. Everything she wants, she gets." "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry you've been dealing with this for a while. But I'm curious, why didn't you eat anything at school?" Mom doesn't send me to school on days she doesn't let me eat. I stay home. Mom measures the food in the house, and if even a bit is missing when she gets back, I get punished more. So she's starving you and hurting your education. I'm going to do my best to help you out, okay? I need you to tell me right now if you want to come live with me. I'll take care of everything you need and keep you away from Mom and Dad. Of course, Grandma. Anywhere away from here would be great. I promise to be good. Just please take me away. I promise I will, darling, but it will take some time. Can you handle staying here a little longer? Yeah, I can. I've been here for 15 years, so I can wait a bit more. I carefully took away all the wrappers and made sure to leave no trace of food. I didn't want Julie to make things worse for Daniel. We cleaned up any crumbs and double-checked to make sure everything looked as it had before. I went home and called Kyle to let him know I had gotten my scarf back and thanked him for being cooperative. Next, I contacted a good friend who worked in family law. I explained the situation, and he told me it would be a long, hard fight for custody of Daniel. He said I might get temporary custody, but Julie could change her behavior and get him back. With little evidence, it seemed fighting for custody wasn't in my favor. However, I had a plan. I could use the evidence to make Julie agree to let me be Daniel's legal guardian. Julie worked as a counselor at a middle school, and she wouldn't want her child abuse to become public and ruin her job prospects. I kept a careful watch over the footage for the next few days, gathering evidence and preparing the paperwork for a transfer of guardianship. I waited until the weekend to go over to Kyle's without notice. When Kyle opened the door, he seemed surprised. Mom, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you and Julie. I don't think now's a good time. Why? What's going on? Just family stuff. How come you're suddenly visiting so often? Can't I visit my son? I didn't think I needed special permission for that. No, I didn't mean it like that. It's just that you've taken a sudden interest in us this week, and it's weird because you rarely ever drop by. It's not really weird. I only came over today because I have something very important to talk about with you too. What's that sound? I knew Julie was doing something to Daniel because of how evasive Kyle was being. When I heard loud crying from Daniel's room, I pushed Kyle aside and went into the house. I couldn't stand by and do nothing. I rushed to Daniel's room and burst through the door. Daniel was sobbing, clutching his face. Julie was breathing hard, glaring at him with such malice that I shivered. I ran to Daniel and asked if he was okay. He hugged me tightly and wailed into my ear. Julie huffed and walked away. When Daniel calmed down, I saw his cheek was red and swelling. His knuckles were bleeding, and there were welts on his arms from the stick. I felt a rage I had never felt before. How could anyone hit a child so hard? No child deserves that. I went downstairs to the kitchen, grabbed a bag of frozen veggies, and brought it back to Daniel to reduce the swelling in his cheek. Once he was okay, I told him I would take him to my place and asked him to pack as many things as he could. Then I went downstairs to confront Julie and Kyle. Julie looked mad, and Kyle looked like he wanted to disappear. How dare you barge into our home like that? Isn't it a good thing I did? You were hitting your child. What I do in my family is none of your business. Your child is my grandson, and he is part of my family too. You're hurting him, and I can't let that continue. He may be your grandson, but you don't live with him. You don't know what a brat he is. I'm just disciplining him. Who cares if he's a brat? He's a child, and there are many other ways to discipline a child without hitting them. You, of all people, should know this. I don't believe in that gentle parenting nonsense. Leave me and my family alone. I'm afraid I can't do that. What do you mean? I handed Julie the papers to transfer guardianship rights to me. Both she and Kyle stared at the papers, confused. I explained that they both had to sign, or I would release proof of them hitting Daniel. What do you mean by proof? I set up a hidden camera in Daniel's room last week. I have all the proof I need. Neither of your jobs will appreciate what you've done, especially yours, Julie. If you want to keep any income, I suggest you sign the papers. You were spying on us? That's a gross violation of our privacy. I only acted on information I had. I needed to make sure Daniel was safe. Mom, don't do this to us. Give us another chance. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. I don't want to hear it. I'm very disappointed in you, Kyle. I raised you to be better than this. You're just as guilty as Julie, if not more. I'm taking Daniel with me, and I expect these papers to be signed. If not, you know what will happen. They didn't put up a fight as Daniel and I left. I took Daniel to get dinner and ice cream, trying my best to comfort him. I gave him a safe space to share his feelings without fear. In the following weeks, I was granted legal guardianship of Daniel. Julie and Kyle claimed they planned to move to a different state and didn't want to disrupt Daniel's education as the reason for transferring guardianship. They did move, which was a big relief for me. Daniel is doing much better now. He's happier, knowing he won't run into his parents for a long time. He's one of the kindest and sweetest kids I know, and he thanks me every day for what I did for him. I intend to keep my promise to always protect him. Thank you for listening.
The first time I saw Scott was at a college seminar. We were both there for extra credit, but we were studying different things. He was a business major, and I was studying literature. I noticed him right away when he asked the professor a tough question. After class, we ended up at the same coffee shop. It felt like fate was bringing us together. We talked about everything: college, our hobbies, and even childhood memories. I come from a pretty strict family, he said while sipping his coffee. My parents are very religious. I shrugged. My parents are more open-minded. They always told me to question everything.
Scott laughed.
Sounds like we're from different worlds. Even though we were different, we felt a strong connection. We started seeing each other more, studying together, and exploring the city on weekends. After about 3 years of dating, we decided to move in together. It made sense since our apartments were far from campus, and we were spending so much time together anyway. But when Scott told his parents, they didn't take it well. During a dinner at their house, his mom, Mrs. Tyler, was the first to speak up. Living together before marriage, Scott?
You know how we feel about that.
Scott shifted uncomfortably. Mom, times have changed. It's not a big deal. His dad added, in this house it is. You're living in sin. I could feel their stares, so I tried to ease the tension. We respect your beliefs, but this is our decision. We're adults. Mrs. Tyler sighed. It's just not how we raised you. Scott took my hand. Amy and I love each other, and we want to start our life together. I hope you can support that. The night ended on a heavy note, but Scott and I stuck with our choice. We found a cozy apartment near campus and moved in. Days turned into weeks, then months. Our relationship grew stronger, but the tension with his parents was always there, like a sad background noise. One evening, as we were settling into our new life, there was a knock on the door. It was Mrs. Tyler, holding a pie. I thought I'd stop by and see how you two are doing, Mrs. Tyler said, looking around with a critical eye. We're doing great, Mrs. Tyler, I replied, trying to be polite. She sat down and placed the pie on the table. This is all temporary, right? You'll get married soon? Scott cleared his throat. We haven't decided that yet, Mom. As weeks and months passed, the pressure from Scott's parents started to affect us. Our carefree dates and movie nights started to feel different, with a constant expectation of marriage hanging over us. One evening, while we were cooking dinner in our small kitchen, Scott brought it up. Amy, have you ever thought about having a wedding? I looked up, surprised. For us? Are you proposing? He smiled awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. Not exactly. I mean, yes, I want to marry you someday, but right now it's more about my parents. Maybe if we had a ceremony, they'd ease up. I sighed. So, you're talking about a wedding without making it legal? He nodded. Just an idea. We could invite our friends, make it fun. My parents get their wedding, and we get some peace. It wasn't the romantic proposal I had imagined, but I understood where he was coming from. All right, I said slowly, but only if we do it our way, small and intimate. No big church wedding. Scott grinned, relieved. Deal. The next few weeks were a blur of planning. We picked a beautiful outdoor spot, invited close friends and family, and organized a simple but heartfelt ceremony. When we told his parents, their reaction was calmer than expected. An outdoor wedding? Mrs. Tyler asked, raising an eyebrow. Well, it's not traditional, but if it means you're taking the next step, I guess we can support it. Mr. Tyler added, as long as you're committed to each other, that's what matters. The day of the wedding was sunny and bright. I wore a simple white dress, and Scott looked great in a suit. Our friends cheered, and even Scott's parents seemed genuinely happy. During the reception, Mrs. Tyler pulled me aside. Amy, I want to apologize, she said softly. I know we've been hard on you both, but seeing you together today made me realize that love is what really matters. I smiled, touched by her words. Thank you, Mrs. Tyler. That means a lot. The day ended on a high note, with everyone dancing and celebrating our love. It felt like we had finally won Scott's parents over, and I hoped this would be a fresh start. But as time passed, things changed. His parents started visiting us every day, often without letting us know beforehand. They'd show up with advice or subtle criticisms, as if the wedding had given them permission to interfere in our lives. One evening, after a long day, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, Mrs. Tyler stood there holding a casserole. Just thought I'd bring you some dinner, she said with a smile that didn't seem entirely sincere. Thanks, I replied, taking the dish, but you really don't have to. She waved it off. It's no trouble. I just thought, since you're both so busy, you might not have time to cook. I forced a smile, feeling the hidden judgment. We manage, but thanks anyway. After she left, I sighed deeply. Scott put his arm around me. It'll be okay, he whispered. But it wasn't just the casserole. Soon came the little comments and questions like, why is the house so messy? Or have you thought about cooking something healthier? Mrs. Tyler would say these things, pretending to be concerned. One day, I came home from work, tired, and found her in our living room rearranging our bookshelves. Mrs. Tyler, what are you doing? I asked, shocked. She looked up like it was perfectly normal. Just thought I'd tidy up. The shelves looked a bit cluttered. Scott walked in with 2 cups of tea. Mom's just helping out, Amy, he said, trying to smooth things over. I took a deep breath, my patience running thin. This is our home, Scott. We didn't ask for help. Mrs. Tyler pressed her lips together, her eyes starting to water. I'm just trying to be helpful. We're family now. These visits became more frequent. They dropped by without warning, offering advice we didn't ask for and criticizing decisions we'd made as a couple. It became clear they no longer respected our boundaries. One evening, after an especially stressful visit, Scott and I sat down to talk. Scott, this has to stop, I said, my voice shaking with frustration. I can't live like this, feeling judged in my own home. He ran his fingers through his hair, looking just as stressed. I know, Amy, but they're my parents. I don't know how to tell them to back off without hurting their feelings, Scott said. I replied, but what about our feelings? Our peace of mind? We can't keep sacrificing that for them. A week later, we invited his parents over for dinner, deciding to face the issue directly. The evening started off nicely. We talked about work, friends, and the latest news. But as the main course was served, I took a deep breath and said, Mrs. Tyler, Mr. Tyler, we invited you over because there's something we need to talk about. Mr. Tyler looked up, his fork paused. What's the matter? I glanced at Scott, who gave me an encouraging nod. It's about the frequent visits and, well, the constant advice on our lives. Mrs. Tyler looked surprised. We're just trying to help. Scott stepped in. Mom, Dad, we know you care, but it's becoming too much. We need space to live our lives, make our own mistakes, and grow together. Tears filled Mrs. Tyler's eyes. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Mr. Tyler added sternly, we're only looking out for you. It seems Amy doesn't value family. I felt guilty, but stood firm. It's not about appreciation. It's about respecting our boundaries and our choices. The room grew quiet, the tension thick. Mrs. Tyler wiped her eyes with a napkin, her shoulders shaking. We just wanted to be part of your lives. I never thought it would come to this. Scott looked torn but stayed strong. Mom, we love you, but this is our life. We need you to understand that. The evening ended with Mrs. Tyler in tears, Mr. Tyler looking disappointed, and an unspoken agreement that things needed to change. As they left, I felt a mix of relief and dread, unsure of what the future would hold for our relationships. In the days that followed, the house was unusually quiet. The constant visits stopped, but the silence felt both comforting and unsettling. Every time the doorbell rang or there was a knock, my heart raced, thinking it might be Scott's parents, but it never was. One evening, as Scott and I sat on the couch, he brought up the topic. Amy, do you think we were too harsh? They're my parents. Maybe we overreacted. I took his hand, feeling its warmth. Scott, it's not about being harsh. It's about setting boundaries. We did what we had to do. He sighed deeply. I know. It's just hard. I never thought we'd end up in this situation with Scott's parents. As the weeks went by, we started feeling the weight of our decision. There were no more surprise visits, but also no calls or messages. It felt like we had completely cut ties. During this time, I found comfort in browsing houses online. One day, as I was scrolling, I came across a beautiful home in a nearby town. It had a big garden, a spacious living area, and most importantly, it was far from all the stress we were dealing with. Scott, come look at this, I called out. He came over and looked at the screen. Wow, it's beautiful. But why are you looking at houses? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. I've been thinking maybe it's time for a fresh start. Somewhere new, where we can make our own memories, away from all this drama. He looked surprised. You mean move? Leave everything behind? I nodded. It's a big step, I know. But maybe it's what we need. We talked about it a lot, weighing the pros and cons. The idea of starting fresh was exciting but also a bit scary. Still, the more we discussed it, the more it felt like the right thing to do. A few weeks later, we went to see the house in person. It was even more beautiful, and the neighborhood seemed perfect. After thinking it over, I decided to use the money I had inherited from my grandmother to buy it. When we signed the papers, I felt a mix of excitement for the new beginning and sadness for what we were leaving behind. The move went smoothly, and soon we were settling into our new home. It felt like a dream. The peace and quiet were just what we needed. One evening, as we enjoyed a quiet dinner in our new dining room, Scott said, Amy, I think this was the best decision we ever made. I smiled, feeling content. I think so too. The first few months in our new home were perfect. The mornings were peaceful, with birds chirping, and the evenings were calm and relaxing. Scott and I fell into a comfortable routine, enjoying the privacy and quiet our new place offered. It felt like the past was behind us, and the drama that once filled our lives had faded away. Then, one day, everything changed. I was in the kitchen making dinner when the doorbell rang.
Scott went to answer it.
I heard murmurs and then a voice I knew all too well. My heart sank. It was Mrs. Tyler. I walked to the door, shocked. There they were, Mrs. and Mr. Tyler, standing with suitcases at our doorstep. Mom, Dad, what are you doing here? Scott asked, his voice full of surprise. Mrs. Tyler smiled, but it seemed a little too sweet. We missed you, dear. So we thought, why not pay a visit? I tried to stay calm. This is unexpected, Mr. Tyler added. We just wanted to see where our son is living now. Is that so wrong? Scott looked conflicted. Of course not, but a heads up would have been nice. Mrs. Tyler glanced around, her eyes taking in our home. Oh, what a lovely place you have here. Much nicer than the old one. I felt a bit irritated, but didn't say anything. Their visit turned into a stay. One night became 3, then 4. They started making themselves comfortable, just like they had in our previous home. One evening after dinner, I pulled Scott aside. Scott, we can't go down this road again. We moved to get away from this.
He sighed.
I know, Amy, but they're my parents. I can't just kick them out. Then what? Let them take over our lives again. Mrs. Tyler, who must have overheard us, walked over with tears in her eyes. Is that how you feel, Scott? That we're a burden? Scott looked helplessly at me, then back at her. Mom, it's not like that. We just wish you'd told us you were coming. She sniffled. We just wanted to be close to our son, but it seems we're not welcome here either. I had a sinking feeling when Scott's parents mentioned they had made a decision about their living situation. Scott and I had been talking privately about how to handle this, and now it looked like the issue was going to come out in the open. Amy, Scott, Mr. Tyler began. We have some news. Scott shifted in his seat, already sensing what was coming.
Go on, he said.
Mrs. Tyler, trying to sound cheerful, said, We've sold our house. We realize there's no need for it when we have such a lovely family home here with you too. My eyes widened in shock. You did what? We wanted to be closer to you both, Mr. Tyler explained, looking sincere. Mrs. Tyler looked hurt. We're family. Why wouldn't you want us here? I took a deep breath and finally said what I had been holding back. This house, it's mine. It's not owned by both of us. It's in my name only. I went to the study and brought back the ownership documents. Mrs. Tyler looked at the papers, then back at me, clearly stunned. But you're married. What's yours is Scott's and vice versa. I smiled slightly. That's where you're mistaken. We had a wedding ceremony, yes, but Scott and I never legally married. We never signed any official documents. So technically, you're not my in-laws. The weight of my words hung in the air. Mrs. Tyler's face turned pale, her eyes wide in disbelief. Mr. Tyler looked from me to Scott, speechless. Mrs. Tyler looked to Scott, hoping for him to deny what I said. But Scott took my hand, showing his support. It's true, Mom and Dad, he said calmly. We thought you'd accept things more if we had a ceremony, but we never felt the need to make it legal. Mrs. Tyler began to cry. So you deceived us, and now you're throwing us out? The tension in the room was thick. The shock quickly turned into anger. So, you fooled everyone with a fake wedding, and you think that makes everything okay? Mrs. Tyler's voice was sharp. Scott sighed. It wasn't about fooling anyone. It's how we wanted to live. The ceremony was for us, and for those who wanted to celebrate our love. Mrs. Tyler's face turned red with frustration. You defy marriage, live in sin, and mock us with a fake wedding? I've had enough. Mr. Tyler stood up abruptly. You, young lady, are a sinner, a witch, pulling my son away from his family and his values. I was shocked by their strong reaction, but I stood my ground. I haven't taken Scott from anyone. He's made his own choices, and you need to respect that. Mrs. Tyler, her eyes filled with tears, but her voice firm, said, Scott, come home with us. Leave this woman. She's done nothing but trap you in her lies. Scott, always calm, replied, Mom, Dad, I love you both, but my place is here with her. She's been nothing but kind. Even when you haven't. You can't just ask me to leave her. You're choosing her over us? Mr. Tyler's voice was filled with anger and disbelief. I'm choosing to live my life the way I want, Scott answered. The room fell silent. The air was thick with tension. Mrs. Tyler's face showed hurt and betrayal. Fine, she said coldly. But remember, you're turning your back on your family, on your faith, all for her. I'm not turning my back on anyone, Scott said softly. I just wish you'd understand. Mrs. Tyler's voice was bitter as she turned to her husband. Let's go. She didn't look back as they left, leaving behind a wave of hurt, confusion, and uncertainty. I looked at Scott, and his face reflected the same feelings I had. We both knew things had changed forever, and there was no going back. I was heading home from work when my neighbor, Mrs. Peter, called out to me. She was an older lady known for her daily walks and knowing all the local gossip. Did you hear about the Tyler family not selling their house? She asked with a knowing look. I stopped, surprised. What do you mean? She leaned in, lowering her voice. They never put their house on the market. Angela heard it from Sharon, who works at the town's real estate office. There's no record of their property being for sale. A knot formed in my stomach. Had they been lying to us this whole time? When I got home, I told Scott what Mrs. Peter said. He looked shocked. I can't believe they'd lied to us. What were they trying to do? We both knew the answer. They were trying to manipulate us. It was hard to accept. While we had been trying to understand and accommodate them, they had been playing games. Scott sighed, rubbing his temples. This changes everything. It's one thing to have disagreements, but outright lying is something else. We can't let them keep pulling us into their manipulative games. I nodded firmly. We need boundaries, real ones. You're right, Scott agreed. We can't keep living like this. It's unhealthy for us and our relationship. The next day, Scott went to his parents' house to confront them and get some answers. When he came back, he looked a mix of angry and sad. They admitted it, he said, his voice heavy. They thought if they moved in with us, we'd be a proper family again. They felt threatened by how independent we've become. We sat down to talk about what to do next. It was clear that, for our own peace of mind and the health of our relationship, we needed space from them. We need a break, Scott said. Some time away from all this drama and manipulation. I agree, I said. It's the best decision for us right now. That evening, we sent a message to his parents, letting them know about our decision. Their reply was full of anger and accusations, but we stood firm. We needed this time for ourselves and our future. The next few weeks were peaceful. We focused on each other, rebuilding the trust and closeness that had been strained over the past months. One evening, as we sat on our porch looking at the stars, Scott turned to me. "Thank you," he whispered, "for standing by me, for fighting for us." I smiled and squeezed his hand. Always. The journey had been long and full of challenges, but it reminded us of how important boundaries, honesty, and mutual respect are in any relationship. As the night deepened, we looked ahead, hoping for peace and understanding in the future.
"Don't you dare act like you didn't know what you were doing," my mom yelled into the phone. Her voice was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "We're family. You can't just leave us because your feelings got hurt." I sat in my home office, staring at the December rain tapping on the windows of my townhouse in Austin. I felt frozen and angry at the same time. Everything I believed about my family had just fallen apart. And it all started with one text message. My brother Paul sent a message to our family group chat by mistake. He meant to send it to a secret chat he had with just our parents. My name is Mary Tyler. I'm 37 years old. Until yesterday, I thought I was doing the right thing, helping my parents with their retirement costs. I built a successful marketing consulting business after college. 6 years ago, when the business really started to grow, I began sending my parents extra money every month. They always had money problems, and I wanted to help them relax and enjoy life without worrying about bills. What I didn't know was how they truly saw me. The family ATM just sent another $4,000, Paul had written. Then my dad replied, "LMAO, keep that gravy train going. She's too dumb to know we're using her." Then my mom added, "I just bought those golf clubs your dad wanted. Mary would lose it if she knew her money wasn't going to medicine." More screenshots kept coming. Years of texts about how to trick me, how to use my kindness, how to get even more money from me. I couldn't breathe as I read them all. Paul tried to delete the messages, but it was too late. I had seen everything, 4 years of them laughing, behind my back. Planning expensive trips while telling me they couldn't afford their pills. Buying new cars while saying their heating bill was too high. My phone hasn't stopped ringing or buzzing since. My dad said they were just joking. My mom... Well, she screamed. Paul said I was taking everything the wrong way. He claimed he only went along with it to stay on our parents' good side. But their own words showed the truth. The rain outside got heavier, just like the anger building up inside me. I had been paying for their comfortable retirement for years, thinking I was helping them survive. But while I was trying to help, they were living a good life, laughing at me behind my back and using me. They thought their dumb, successful daughter was easy to fool. The betrayal hurt more than I ever expected. A loud knock at the door pulled me out of my thoughts. I walked over, still holding my phone. I looked through the peephole. Paul was standing there, soaked from the rain. He looked desperate. I felt my jaw tighten. I didn't want to talk to him, but maybe it was time to hear him out. I also had some things I needed to say. I opened the door but didn't let him in. "What do you want?" I asked. Paul looked miserable, rain dripping from his hair. Mary, please, can I come in? I can explain everything. Explain what? How you've all been laughing at me for years? I held up my phone, still showing one of his texts. Just told Mary Dad needs dental surgery. LOL. It's not what it looks like, Paul said, his voice shaky. Mom and Dad, they started it. I just went along with it. So you were just following orders? I snapped. Like some kind of financial soldier? The words came out harsher than I meant, but I couldn't stop myself. I've been sending $4,000 every month, Paul. That's $37,000 a year. For 6 years. Do you know what that adds up to? Paul looked at the ground. I know it's a lot. $181,000, Paul. And that doesn't even include the extra money I sent for Dad's medical bills or Mom's broken furnace last winter. I felt sick saying it. I remembered how I skipped a vacation to send them another $6,000 for a furnace that probably never broke. Look, I know they took it too far, Paul said. But they're getting older. They're 70, not 100. Dad's still golfing every weekend with the expensive clubs I paid for, thinking he needed medicine. I was shouting now. I didn't care if the neighbors heard. Please, Mary. They're freaking out. Dad's worried about his heart meds. I let out a bitter laugh. The fake meds, or the real ones I've been paying for while you all spend the money on luxury stuff? Paul's face fell. I messed up, he whispered. No, Paul said. But they really do need your help now. They've gotten used to the extra stuff. They can't even pay their mortgage without you. The mortgage on the lakeside condo they bought last year? I asked, while telling me they were struggling to pay rent on a small apartment? A strange calm came over me. I think you should leave, I said. Mary, please. No, I've heard enough of Mary, please. I'm not Mary, please anymore. I'm just Mary, and Mary is done. After Paul left, I sank into the couch, my whole body shaking. The screenshots from their secret group chat played over and over in my head. In one, my dad had written, "Just told Mary the roof is leaking. Let's see how much we can get out of her this time." My mom replied, "She's such a sucker for helping family. I almost feel bad. Almost." Then Paul added, "Maybe we should start betting on how fast she sends the money." To them, I wasn't family. I was just an ATM, someone to use, a joke. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. There it was, $4,000 sent every month for the past 6 years. And then all the emergencies, another $41,000 gone. Dental work that never happened. Car repairs for problems that weren't real. Medical bills for treatments they never got. And what did I give up? I waited 2 extra years to buy my own home, thinking they needed help with rent. I worked 72-hour weeks to pay for my life and theirs. I skipped vacations, bought used furniture, and cut back on my own needs so they could live comfortably. And for what? So they could laugh at me? Buy golf clubs and go on cruises while I worried if they had enough to eat? I opened another tab and logged into the investment account I had secretly created for them 4 years ago. My surprise gift for when they turned 75. A retirement fund. I had been putting in $2,000 every month. The balance showed just over $43,000. My finger hovered over the close account button, but I didn't press it. Not yet. I needed to think clearly. I called my best friend Jessica. She's also my lawyer. They did what? She almost shouted after I told her everything. I know, I said. My voice felt empty. I've been so stupid. No, Mary, you've been kind. They're the ones who should feel ashamed. Her voice softened. What do you want to do now? I don't know, I whispered. I admitted it. Part of me wanted to cut them off completely. Another part wanted to face them and hear whatever excuses they might have. Before you do anything, Jessica said, we need to look at what you've set up for them legally. Are they on any of your accounts, insurance policies, that retirement fund you mentioned? I felt a cold chill. I hadn't even thought about how connected we still were financially. Besides the monthly bank transfers and the investment account, I had added them to my premium health insurance plan 3 years ago as dependents. My dad's heart medication, if it was even real, was being paid for through my insurance. They were also listed as beneficiaries on my life insurance policy. I need to untangle all of this, I said out loud. One step at a time, Jessica said. First, gather proof of everything you've given them. Bank records, texts, anything. Second, make a list of all the financial ties you want to end. Fourth, decide if you want to explain to them why you're doing this. Right after we hung up, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. Your father is very upset. His blood pressure is through the roof because of your behavior. We need to talk now. Something inside me hardened. They were still trying to manipulate me, even now. They still thought I'd drop everything just because they mentioned a health issue. Not anymore. I opened my laptop and started taking screenshots of every monthly payment I had sent. Then I opened a new document and titled it Family Financial Support, 6 years. I listed every emergency they had claimed, every dollar I had sent, and every sacrifice I had made. By the time I finished, it was 14 pages long. The truth was clear. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. The next morning, I woke up feeling clear-headed for the first time in years. I knew exactly what I needed to do. Before I had time to second-guess myself, I called into work and told my assistant I needed a personal day. This was going to take all my focus. Mary Tyler speaking, I said when my phone rang 30 minutes later. Miss Tyler, this is Timothy from Kentucky Community Bank. I'm calling you back about closing an investment account. Yes, thank you for calling me so quickly. I took a deep breath. I need to close the supplemental retirement account I set up for Brian and Barbara Tyler. I see. May I ask if there's a problem with the account? There's no problem with the account, I said calmly. I said, just a problem with who the money was meant for. After Timothy confirmed my identity and that I had full control of the account, he explained the steps. Since I was the only person listed on the account and it was set up as a gift, I could close it without telling my parents or getting their permission. The $3,500 in the account would be sent back to my main bank account within 4 business days. Is there anything else I can help you with today, Miss Tyler? He asked. Actually, yes, I said. I want to cancel all monthly transfers to the joint account of Brian and Barbara Tyler. That's currently set at $4,000 per month, correct? Correct, I said firmly. Please stop it immediately. Step 1. Done. Next, I called my health insurance provider. This part was harder. You can only remove dependents in the middle of the year for certain approved reasons, and finding out your parents were lying to you wasn't one of them. But after I explained everything to a helpful representative named Ronald, he found a way. Since they live in their own home and you no longer pay over 60% of their expenses, we can count this as a change in dependent status, he explained. They'll get a notice saying they've been removed from your policy at the end of the month. That gives them 30 days to find new coverage. That's perfect, I said. Thank you for understanding. Family stuff can be tough, Ronald said gently. I've been through it too. Step 3. Done. Changing the life insurance was the easiest of all. I filled out a simple form online and removed my parents as the people who would get the money if anything happened to me. I replaced them with a local children's charity. By noon, I had cut almost every financial tie with my family, all except one. My brother Paul's student loan. I'd been paying $800 a month for 4 years. He still had 3 years left. That one made me pause. Paul had been part of the lies, but he also seemed like he felt bad. Was he just doing what our parents wanted, or was he only sorry because he got caught? Just then, a text from Paul popped up on my screen. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Dad says his prescription was denied at the pharmacy. What did you do? That told me everything I needed to know. No apology, no responsibility. Just more pressure to send money again. I replied, their consequences are not my problem anymore. The phone rang right away. It was Paul. I let it go to voicemail. Instead, I opened my email and began writing a formal letter to my parents. I attached the 14-page document I had created the night before. I gave the email a simple title, Financial Support Provided, 2019 to 2024. The message read, Brian and Barbara. Attached is a full record of the financial support I have given you over the past 6 years. The total is $225,800. You have been removed from my health insurance effective October 31st, and the retirement account has been closed. Your own messages, saved in screenshots, show how you lied to me, used me, and made fun of my kindness. Do not contact me again unless it is to return the money you took by lying. Mary Tyler, I read the email twice, attached the document, and hit send. Step 3, done. Then I blocked their numbers on my phone, removed them from my social media, and sat. Back in my chair, I was exhausted but also relieved. For the first time in years, my money was truly mine. I enjoyed 3 peaceful days before they found another way to reach me. At 9:10 p.m., while I was reviewing work, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw my parents and Paul on my front porch. Their faces showed a mix of anger and fear. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called Jessica. "They're at my house," I whispered as if they could hear me. "Don't let them in," Jessica said firmly. "If they won't leave, call the police. You have the right." "That feels like a lot," I said. "Trust me, Mary. Once they're inside, it'll be much harder, emotionally and legally." The doorbell rang again. Then came pounding. "Mary!" my dad shouted. "We know you're in there. You can't just shut us out without talking." I sent Paul a text. "I have nothing to say. Please leave or I'll call the police." Through the peephole, I saw Paul check his phone, show it to my parents, and start arguing with them. My mom was crying. My dad's face was red with rage. Finally, they left, but not before my dad yelled, "You're going to regret this, Mary! We're family! You can't just walk away!" The irony wasn't lost on me. They had walked away from treating me like family a long time ago. They saw me as nothing more than a source of money. The next morning, the emails started. My mom sent a long one, full of guilt, saying my dad's health was getting worse without his medication. My dad sent a short, angry message telling me to stop this childish behavior now. Paul begged me to reconsider, saying they couldn't make their mortgage payment without my help. I forwarded every message to Jessica without replying. 2 days later, I got a certified letter in the mail from my parents. Inside was a handwritten note from my mom. "Mary, we don't understand why you're punishing us like this. Yes, we made a few jokes in bad taste, but that's what families do. Your father's heart medicine costs $600 a month without insurance. Our mortgage is due next week, and we can't pay it without your help. We might lose our condo. Is that what you want? For your elderly parents to be homeless? Please stop this and talk to us." I almost laughed at the word elderly. They were only 70 and both healthy. In fact, my dad's golf game looked great in the country club photos Paul had accidentally included in one of the texts. Just to be sure, I called the pharmacy where my dad gets his medicine. I pretended to be my mom. "I'm calling about my husband Brian Tyler's heart medication," I said. "How much is it without insurance?" "Let me check," the pharmacist said. After a moment, they answered, "It's $50 for a 30-day supply, Mrs. Tyler, not $600. Another lie." That evening, Paul showed up outside my office just as I was leaving. He looked awful, tired, with dark circles under his eyes and messy clothes. "Mary, please," he said, stepping in front of me. "They're falling apart. Dad's talking about bankruptcy." "That's not my problem," I said, trying to move past him. "How can you be so cold? They're our parents, are they? Real parents don't take advantage of their kids. Real parents don't laugh behind their daughter's back and call her stupid. They made mistakes, but—" "No," I interrupted. "A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. What they did was planned, and they did it for years. The condo is going into foreclosure. They can't keep it without your help." For a second, I felt guilty. But then I remembered one of the screenshots. Just convinced Mary we're struggling with rent. Meanwhile, we're closing on the lake condo next week. Cheers. "They shouldn't have bought a home they couldn't afford," I said. "What about Dad's medicine? The one that costs $50, not $600? He can get a part-time job if he needs to cover that." Paul looked shocked. "How did you—" I checked. "No more lies, Paul." I walked to my car. "Tell them to look into government help. That's what it's there for." "Mary," he called after me. "They're talking about moving in with me. I can't deal with that." I turned back and said, "That sounds like your problem, Paul. Welcome to consequences." 3 weeks after cutting off my family, I sat in my first therapy session. I'd finally done something for myself. Dr. Thomas, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a serious attitude, listened as I told her the whole messy story. Every day I go back and forth between feeling strong and feeling awful, I admitted. Like yesterday, I heard from a mutual friend that my parents had to cancel their country club membership. I actually felt guilty about it. For hours. That's normal, Dr. Thomas said gently. You're grieving the family you thought you had, and that includes grieving the role you played as their helper, their supporter. But they didn't deserve my support, I said. They were just using me. Both things can be true, she replied. They didn't deserve your help, and you can still feel sad about no longer giving it. I sat with that for a moment. She was right. Then she added, being the one who always helped them, it became part of who you are. Now you're figuring out who you are without that role. I hadn't thought about it that way before, but it made sense. For 6 years, I saw myself as the successful daughter who took care of her parents. Without that, who was I? As I left the session, my phone rang. It was a surprise call from Uncle Ryan, my dad's brother who lived all the way in Iowa. We weren't very close, but I picked up out of curiosity. Mary, it's Uncle Ryan, he said. I just got a weird call from your dad. He asked if he and your mom could come live with us for a while. He said you cut them off and they're about to lose their home. Is that true? I sighed. It's complicated, Uncle Ryan. I figured, he said. Your dad has always been good at twisting the story. His voice was dry and calm. Want to tell me your side? So I did. I told him everything, the screenshots, the lies about the medicine, the money, all of it. When I finished, there was a long pause. I'm not surprised, he finally said. Your dad tried something similar with me years ago. That's why we're not close. I refused to pay for his lifestyle. You knew? I asked, feeling hurt all over again. Why didn't you warn me? Would you have listened? He asked. They had you believing they were broke and you were saving them. Sometimes people have to see the truth for themselves. He was right. Back then, I wouldn't have believed him. For what it's worth, he added, I told your dad I wouldn't take them in. I said they need to downsize and live within their means. He hung up on me. After we ended the call, I felt strangely comforted. I wasn't crazy for cutting them off. I wasn't a bad daughter. I was just their latest target, and I had finally caught on. That evening, I got a text from Paul, this time from a new number. Mom and Dad are moving into my spare room next week. They're selling the condo. Dad's furious. I can't believe this is happening. I didn't respond. 2 days later, another message. The condo is on the market. Dad's car got repossessed yesterday. This is getting really bad, I almost replied. I almost asked if they needed help with moving costs. But then I remembered a screenshot. Paul had once texted. Mary just asked if Dad's okay after his heart appointment, the one for the fake heart problem. They had made their choices. Now they were living with the consequences. In the 4th week, I got an email from someone I didn't know. The subject line read, "Message from your parents." It turned out they had asked a family friend to contact me since I had blocked them everywhere. The email explained how they had to sell most of their furniture, how my dad's health was getting worse from stress, and how they had applied for food stamps, which the email said was deeply embarrassing for my proud father. It ended with, "They just want a chance to talk to you, to explain, to apologize." I thought about it for 6 seconds, then hit delete. I knew their idea of an apology would be whatever they thought might get the money flowing again. I was done with that. Done being used. Done being their ATM. For the first time in years, my money was going toward my future, not their fake emergencies. The guilt was finally fading. And in its place, something unexpected was growing. Freedom. 7 months after I cut all contact, I came home from a business trip and saw something that stopped me cold. My parents were sitting on my front steps. My father looked thinner, and my mother's once perfect hair was showing gray at the roots. Their clothes looked cheaper than what they used to wear. I didn't recognize them at first. My first instinct was to turn around and drive away. but I remembered what Dr. Thomas and I had talked about in therapy. I was stronger now. I could face them and not fall back into their trap. I parked in the driveway and slowly walked up to them, my heart pounding. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Mary," my mom said, her voice shaky. "Please, we just want to talk." "We've learned our lesson," my dad added. "These past months have been awful." I unlocked the door and said, "You have 6 minutes." They walked inside and sat stiffly on the couch, not saying a word at first. I stayed standing with my arms crossed while they sat. "We're sorry," my mother began. "We never should have taken advantage of your kindness." My father nodded. "We've lost everything, the condo, the car, our savings. We had to move in with Paul, and his place is so small your mom has to sleep on a pull-out couch. The country club took away our membership," my mom added. "All our friends there have stopped calling. My medicine has been so expensive. Without your insurance," my dad continued. "Medicare doesn't cover it all." I listened to them list all the things they had lost. I waited for a real apology, but it never came. There was no, "We're sorry we hurt you," or "We were wrong to mock you." Just a long list of their problems, as if everything that went wrong was my fault. "Is that it?" I asked once. They stopped talking. "We want to make things right," my mother said. "We've really suffered, Mary. We've learned our lesson." "What lesson would that be?" I asked. They looked at each other, unsure. "That we shouldn't have taken you for granted," my dad finally said. Translation: "They just regret getting caught." "No," I said quietly. "You haven't learned anything." "What do you mean?" my mother asked, her voice getting a little sharper. "We came all this way to apologize." "No," I said. "You came all this way to tell me how hard things have been without my money. Not once have you said how much you hurt me. Not once have you taken real responsibility." "We said we're sorry," my father said. "For getting caught," I replied. "Not for what you did." I took a deep breath. In the past 7 months, I've spent a lot of time thinking about what a healthy family looks like. And this, I gestured between us, this isn't it. It's not using your child for money. It's not laughing at her behind her back. My mother's face turned cold. "So you're just going to punish us over a few jokes?" "This isn't punishment," I said firmly. "This is me protecting myself from people who've shown they don't really care about me." "We're your parents," my dad said, like that should fix everything. "And I was your daughter," I replied. "Not your personal bank." Then I walked to the door and opened it. "I wish you well," I said. "I really do. I hope you figure out how to live within your budget. But I can't be part of your lives anymore." "You don't mean that," my mother whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "We need you." "That's the problem," I said. "You don't need me. You need what I can give you. That's not the same thing." My father stood up, and his earlier regret quickly turned into anger. "So that's it? After everything we've done for you?" "What exactly have you done for me, Dad, besides take and take and take?" I asked. He didn't have an answer. As they walked out the door, my mom turned back. "You'll regret this, Mary. In the end, family is all you have." I shook my head. "No, Mom. Family is supposed to be the people who love you no matter what. I've built that kind of family with my friends. What you gave me was just a deal. Give us money, and we pretend to care." I closed the door behind them and leaned against it. I listened as their footsteps faded down the walkway. I thought I might feel sad or guilty, but I didn't. What I felt was peace. The ATM was closed for good, and for the first time in my adult life, I was truly free.
My name is Kelly Clarkson. I'm 33 years old and a stay-at-home mom. My husband, Paul, is 39. He's very close to his mother and often speaks to me in a hurtful way. We have 2 kids, an 11-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. After we got married, I started living with Paul's parents. For years now, I've been struggling with my mother-in-law's demands. When I talk to my husband about it, he just says, "Do what my mom says." It feels like my mother-in-law treats me like a servant. Every morning, she calls me right after she wakes up and tells me to come wake her up, even though she's already awake. I have to pull her out of bed, help her get dressed, take her to the bathroom, and then bring her to the living room for breakfast. She has trouble walking, especially in the mornings, so she needs help getting around. By afternoon, she can move a little better on her own.
She often yells at me.
For example, after meals, she demands hot tea right away. One time I said, "The water will boil soon," and she shouted, "Why didn't you boil it before? You know I always have tea after meals." But the day before, she told me not to boil the water until she finished eating. It feels like she's trying to make my life hard on purpose. Paul and I have been married for 11 years, but her walking problems only started about 6 years ago. They're getting worse, even with hospital visits. I've suggested we go walking together to help her move more, but she refuses. Before she had trouble walking, we used to cook and shop together and got along okay. But over time, she started yelling at me and treating me badly. She used to call me Ash, but now she calls me Hey or Airhead. I used to care about my mother-in-law a lot and even relied on her in the past, so I tried to accept the hard situation I'm in now. But it makes me sad to think about how kind she used to be. I talk to my husband about this almost every day, but he just says, "Do what my mom says," and doesn't listen to anything I say, even when I try to talk about her health. That's why I started recording videos to show that I've told him everything. This way, he can't pretend he didn't know what was going on. After a long day of being shouted at and doing everything my mother-in-law asked, I got a phone call from my sister-in-law that made things even worse. She said, "Hey, Linda is coming home because she's going to have a baby. Make sure you take good care of her." I was shocked. I didn't even know Linda was pregnant or married. I asked my mother-in-law, "When did Linda get married?"
I didn't know anything about it.
She said, "I just found out too. But she said she's coming, so get ready. Do you have a problem with what I told you?" She yelled at me so loudly that I realized she only sees me as a servant and someone who will take care of Linda. I knew asking more questions would only make things worse, so I said, "Yes, I understand," and stopped talking. Later, I went out to buy food for dinner. When I came back home, there were a lot of cardboard boxes at the front door. My son ran up to me right away and said, "Mom, Annie says she's going to live here and take my room. Do something." Then my daughter came and said, "They told me I have to share a room with my brother. We can fit 2 beds, but there's only room for 1 desk." They both looked upset. I went to my mother-in-law in the living room to ask what was going on. "Mother, is what the children said true?" But she cut me off and said, "Yes. If the kids told you, then go move Brian's things to the other room. And for dinner, Linda wants steak. So make that." I had no idea Linda was even coming today, let alone changing the kids' rooms or wanting steak for dinner. Then, out of nowhere, Linda started yelling at me too. "Hey Kelly, you have no right to complain to Mom. You're just a freeloader," Linda said, crossing her arms and glaring at me. "Why are you acting so important? Just do what Mom says and take care of her." The children were scared of how Linda was acting and hid behind me. To protect them, I said, "I'll talk to my husband about this," and took them to their room. Once we were in the room, the kids asked, "When is Annie going to leave? She's really mean and scary." Even while I was cooking dinner, they stayed close to me, clearly nervous and not wanting to be alone. I couldn't wait any longer for my husband to get home, so I called him. "Did you know Linda is coming here today to give birth?" I asked. He was surprised. He didn't know either. I told him everything, including how the kids felt. He just said, "Mom told you to clear out one of the kids' rooms, right? So just do it. There's no problem. If Linda wants steak for dinner, make it.
Just do what Mom says."
Of course, Linda is angry. You need to explain everything to the kids. But the room is too small for 2 beds and a desk. What are we supposed to do? I asked. "That's not my problem. Figure it out," he replied. I felt so hopeless. Seeing me like that, my son said, "Mom, it's okay. We just have to deal with it for now." My daughter added, "We can handle it until Auntie leaves. Don't worry." They were right, it's only for a little while, until Linda gives birth. It won't last forever. Their words gave me strength. You're right, I told them. We just have to get through this. But after she leaves, we'll put the room back the way it was. I'm sorry for making you go through this. The kids, who had looked so worried, finally smiled. Then hurry up and make dinner before Annie gets mad, they said. I went to the kitchen, took the meat out of the freezer, and started making steak. A little while later, my husband came home, looking cheerful. He had a box of cake in his hand. As dinner time came, the kids came out of their room and were happy to see the cake. I thought my husband bought the cake to say sorry for how the kids were treated. I told the children, we'll have cake after dinner. But I was wrong. This cake is for Linda and Mom, my husband said without emotion. I asked, why didn't you get one for the kids too? Don't ask silly questions, he replied. I bought it because you made Mom and Linda feel bad. My daughter started crying and said, we didn't do anything wrong. But my husband ignored her and gave the cake to Linda. I held my crying daughter and tried to change the topic. Linda, congratulations on your pregnancy. When is the baby due? I asked with a smile. Thank you. I think in October, Linda replied. I was shocked. That meant she was only 4 months pregnant, yet she was already planning to live here and give birth at home. No wonder her belly didn't show at all. Then my mother-in-law asked, so, when are you getting married? What's your partner like? Linda looked nervous and quickly said, oh, my partner? He's the president of a company. He's super busy, so he can't visit. But he cares about my health and wants me to stay here. I thought she's lying. From her panicked answer, it seemed like not only the pregnancy, but even the marriage might not be true. I decided to find out the truth. The next day, after taking care of my mother-in-law and seeing my husband and kids off, I told my mother-in-law I'll be stepping out for a bit and left the house. First, I went to the apartment where Linda used to live. Luckily, the janitor was working nearby, right in front of her door. I walked over and asked, do you know if someone named Linda Clarkson lived here? He replied, are you a friend of Miss Clarkson? Yes, I said. I couldn't reach her, so I came to check on her.
He seemed to believe me.
He said, actually, I haven't been able to contact her either. She hasn't paid rent in 7 months, and I was getting worried. I thought maybe she collapsed inside, so I was just about to open the door. He asked if I'd help check, and I agreed. He gave me the key, clearly nervous. It would be terrible if something happened to her. I said, I'll go in first. Please follow me. When we opened the door, we saw a pile of unopened letters and postcards marked urgent notice scattered on the floor. I walked in first and called out, Linda? Linda, are you here? As I stepped farther into the apartment, a man sitting on the sofa jumped up, surprised by our sudden arrival. Who are you? I'm calling the police, he said, reaching for his phone. The janitor quickly stepped in and said, I'm the janitor of this building. We couldn't reach Miss Clarkson, and we were worried something had happened to her. That's why we came in. The janitor then added, this apartment is only for one person. Who are you? We might need to call the police on you. Looking nervous, the man sat down and introduced himself. My name is Henry. I'm dating Miss Clarkson. Henry then said something shocking. Linda had told him to stay here until I and the kids moved out because her brother, my husband, was planning to divorce me. She had been trying to break up our family and take over our home. I was shocked and tried to stay calm. I said, I know Linda. I came because I couldn't contact her. I also heard she's pregnant. Is the baby yours? Henry looked surprised. Pregnant, he said, confused. That's when I realized something wasn't right. Henry then shared that he had been having an affair with Linda while he was still married. His ex-wife found out, and that caused their divorce. He was supposed to take over a top position at his father-in-law's company, but after the divorce, he lost everything and had to quit his job. With nowhere else to go, he moved in with Linda. He told us he had a son from his previous marriage and didn't want another child. The divorce had hurt his son deeply, and he still felt guilty. Even while living with Linda, he missed his old family and regretted what he had done.
He began to cry.
I was surprised that he was telling us all of this, but he said he had been feeling lost for a long time and just needed someone to talk to. The janitor then asked, "If you still think about your family, why are you staying with Miss Clarkson? Maybe it's time to think things over." Henry seemed to take that seriously. After thinking for a bit, he picked up his phone and made a call. It seemed like he was calling his ex-wife. He apologized, admitted his mistakes, and promised to live in a way that would make her and their son proud. He asked for a second chance to prove he had changed. After the call, he turned to us and said sorry for everything. He said he was going to live on his own from now on and try to be a better father. He thanked us for helping him see things clearly, packed his things into a bag, and left the apartment. After he left, the janitor said he wished he had asked Henry to contact Linda, since she was the person who signed the rental contract. Asked the janitor who the guarantor was, and he said it was Linda's brother. I told him he should contact the guarantor, then I went back home. When I got home, Linda was crying and my mother-in-law was comforting her. I acted like I didn't know anything and went to the bedroom to change my clothes. Suddenly, Linda came into my room without knocking. "Can you call my boyfriend using your phone? Mine's been blocked, and he's not answering me," she said. I said no. I didn't want to call a stranger using my own phone. Because of that, Linda started holding a grudge against me. Just then, my mother-in-law called for Linda from the living room. Linda glared at me, made a clicking sound with her tongue, and left the room. In the living room, my mother-in-law was questioning Linda. "Paul said he got a call from the janitor at your apartment. Is it true you haven't been paying your rent? And who was that man living there? Is he your boyfriend?" Linda suddenly shouted, "Yes. I came back here planning to start a life with him. But now he wants to go back to his old family and left me." After yelling, she started crying again. I was just walking into the living room when I heard her say, I couldn't reach him, so I asked Kelly to help, but she refused. "She's just being mean and trying to keep us apart." She turned her anger toward me. "How dare she ignore me? She's just a freeloader," she shouted like a child. For a moment, I hoped my mother-in-law would tell her to stop. But instead, she joined in. "I feel the same way. That woman doesn't even know her place. She's not family, just a daughter-in-law acting too bold," she said. Then she added, "Linda, if you're going to live here with your boyfriend, then Kelly and her kids will have to leave." I had done so much for my mother-in-law, even putting her needs above my children's. I took her insults and harsh words, hoping one day we'd go back to the happy times we once had. But I now realized that those days were gone for good. I felt crushed. When I walked into the living room, they both started attacking me. "So, you refused Linda's request? Didn't I tell you? You're just freeloaders. You have no right to say no," my mother-in-law yelled. "It's because you didn't leave that he got tired and walked away," Linda added. I thought back to my talk with Henry. His reason for leaving Linda was simple. His original family mattered more to him. He chose to go back to them. So, this wasn't my fault. Still, I decided to push Linda's buttons a little. I knew she'd lash out more, but being called a freeloader and seeing my children treated badly couldn't go on. I had made up my mind to cut ties with this family. "You should call him," Linda said like a child. "Tell him I'm crying and ask him to come back." Hearing her talk like that, along with my mother-in-law agreeing, was the last straw for me. I said, "All right, if that's what you want, then give me his number." She gave me Henry's number, and I put the call on speaker. When he answered, I repeated Linda's words. "Linda is very upset about the breakup. She's crying. Please come back." Henry replied calmly, "I don't know who you are, but I've ended things with Linda. I love my real family. What I had with Linda was a mistake, and I regret it." Linda suddenly lost control, grabbed the phone, and shouted, "What about the baby in my stomach? You need to take responsibility and marry me." Henry responded, "Linda, it wasn't long ago that I bought you medicine and pads because you had terrible period pain. And we never had that kind of relationship. Not after my divorce." Linda went silent. Henry said, "I'm sorry," and hung up. I hoped they'd finally realize Henry left because of his own choice, not because of me. But of course, that's not how it went. As soon as the call ended, Linda snapped at me. "You didn't try hard enough. If you'd been more emotional, maybe he would have come back. It's your fault. She was acting like a child, even though she's 36, 4 years older than me. I was shocked.
Then my mother-in-law joined in.
She's right. It's all your fault. You are a freeloader. Get out of this house right now. As expected, I replied, understood, and started packing my things. That evening, when the children came home from school, I sat them down and said, I'm going to divorce your father and we'll leave this house. After a short pause, my son smiled and said, that sounds like a good idea.
My daughter smiled too.
Grandma and aunt are scary. I wanted to leave a long time ago. I asked the kids, will you be okay without your dad? My son answered, Dad was never on your side or ours, so it's okay. My daughter asked, are we going to live at Grandma's house on your side, just the three of us? It seemed she wasn't worried about her dad at all. Soon after, my husband came home. I didn't greet him. I was busy packing. He walked into the room angrily after hearing his mother and sister's version of the story. This was the final scene I had imagined. Hey, you made Mom and Linda upset. Didn't I tell you to just do what Mom says? He said, using the same line he always did. I understand, I replied. That's why I'm listening and leaving. Also, please sign this. I stared at him and placed the divorce papers in front of him. Where are you and your parasite kids going now? He said as he signed the papers without hesitation. Even if you leave, you're jobless. You won't be able to raise 2 kids on your own. He walked out of the room and returned to the living room like nothing had happened. Then I called my brother. Can you come with a truck tomorrow morning to help us move? I had already told him everything about my husband, my mother-in-law, and how Linda suddenly moved in. My parents knew too, thanks to my brother. They had even advised me to get a divorce. So, the phone call was quick. You've done well, Kelly.
Don't blame yourself, my brother said.
His words gave me a bit of relief. The next day, my brother and some of his coworkers came with a truck and helped us move. They worked quickly. Linda stood nearby, arms crossed, watching coldly. When I said, please take care of your mother, she didn't say anything. She just went back inside without any expression. Our new place was in a family-friendly apartment owned by my dad. It was right next to my parent house. Since a unit was available, we got to rent it at a low price. My parents had suggested we all live together, but after being called parasites so many times, I didn't want to burden them. The kids were so happy with the new place. They quickly chose their own rooms and helped with unpacking. Hearing their laughter felt like healing after everything we had been through. Then my phone rang. It was my ex-husband, sounding panicked. Mom's in trouble. She's soiled herself, and she's calling for the slave to come clean it up. Come right away. Why should I? I answered calmly. Of course you should. Mom says you have to. The whole house stinks, he shouted, like he forgot we were already divorcing. I said, why would I? I'm not part of your family anymore. I'm just a stranger now. Remember? He exploded in anger. After I took care of you and your 2 parasite kids, you can't even do this one thing? I could handle being called a parasite myself, but I hit my limit when he started calling the children that too. Did you even know your mother has dementia? I said. I've told you many times about the hospital's diagnosis, but you never listened. I even have video proof. I'm not going back to a house where you call my precious kids parasites. Since that smell is from your dear mother, think of it as an air freshener and deal with it. I let everything out at once. I was usually quiet and obedient, so my sudden change shocked my ex-husband into silence. Your mother is rated as needing level 3 care, I continued. That means she needs help from morning to night. It's hard, but good luck. Then I hung up and blocked his number. Later, Linda called, screaming at me to come clean up. I quietly hung up on her and blocked her too. 3 weeks later, a letter from my ex-husband arrived at my parents' house. It explained how bad things had gotten since I left. Without anyone to boss around, my mother-in-law's dementia had gotten worse. Linda had returned home pretending she was pregnant and planning to give birth just so she could live comfortably again. But my ex blamed her for the mess they were in now. They tried to find a care facility for their mother, but all the options were too expensive, so they had no choice but to care for her at home. Linda wanted to go back to her old apartment, but because my ex hadn't paid the rent, the lease was canceled. She had nowhere else to go and had to stay and help care for her mother. My ex and Linda kept fighting about who should take care of her. Ironically, even though my mother-in-law sometimes forgets who my ex and Linda are, she never forgets to call me the slave. For me, waking up with the morning sun shining through the window feels like a gift. A fresh start for me and my children. I have a pharmacist license and hospital experience, but now I'm working at a drugstore. Returning to work after 11 years isn't easy, but no challenge compares to the pain of living with my ex's family. The kids quickly made new friends at school and are happy in their daily life. Most of all, I'm thankful that we can now live as a family, smiling and at peace.